Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Dara Taylor and I'll be showing you today how to sew this stylish two-piece. It's very easy and simple. If you're interested on how I made this, then keep watching. I went ahead to fold my fabric into two, right, making it 4 as you guys can see. So the next thing I'm going to do is to mark out the width of my crotch, and then the width of my crotch I'm using 2 inches. So I'm just going to be marking down 2 inches all the way, and then for the length of the crotch I'm going to be using 15 inches. And what is your crotch area? It's just like your underbum area, and how to measure it is from the start of your waist to the length of your underbum, where your underbum stop. So that is how to know or determine your crotch area. So I minus 2 inches from my band, 2 inches for my band, because I'm going to be putting a band on that point. That was why I minus 2 inches. So the next thing I'm going to do is to go all the way down to the point of my crotch area. I'm going all the way down to the point of my crotch area. You guys can see what this formed right here. Then I'm just going to go ahead to make a curve, because your crotch is not supposed to be 4 corner, it's supposed to be have a like a C curve. So I just made a curve over here. From the point where my crotch ended, I'm going to be making a slanted line all the way to the bottom of it. You can see the way I'm making my slanted line. This is optional if you want to, but if you do not want to, is also fine. The next thing I did was to start my cutting out all these things I marked out. I was not really cutting from the point of my chalk just because of allowance. So when I sew it, it will be up to the point of my chalk area. Then I went ahead to cut out the slanted area also. The next thing I did was to measure out the circumference of my palazzo, the wideness of the palazzo, and the palazzo wideness for this is 22. 22 divided by 2 is 11 inches. So remember, when cutting your palazzo, a palazzo needs to be free. So I'm just marking out 11 inches all the way down. At this point, I did not need my tape anymore. All I was doing was marking a straight line down to the bottom of my palazzo trouser. I then went ahead to cut it out, and this is what it's looking like. I cut it all the way to the bottom part. This here is the top for the palazzo, and the back is smaller than the front. This is the front. I already teared it into 2 for button allowance. That is why it is bigger. Your button allowance for the front should be about 2 inches. Using 2 inches is perfectly okay, right? So the next thing I did is from that point of the back, not from the front, from the point where the back started, I marked out my shoulder width, which is 8 inches, and then I came down by 1 inches, which will represent my shoulder slant. After marking 8 inches, I came down by 1 inches. So below that 1 inch, I marked out my armhole length. Instead of 7, I made it 8 because it is a free top. Then I connected the lines together. As you can see, I connected the line and I also made a slope. So for my neck width, I marked out 3 inches, 3 inches for the neck width. And why I use 3 inches is because of collar. If you use anything further than that, it will be too wide. And then for the bottom, for the neck depth, sorry, I marked 1 inches. It shouldn't be 1.5, but 1 inch is perfectly fine. So then for the front depth, I marked 2.5 inches. 2.5 inch is for the front depth. And remember, all this is a circle neck, a curved neck. What I did next was to just elongate the front depth of the neck. That was what I did. I then curved it all to the point of my buttonhole allowance. That was what I did. The next thing I'm just going to do is to cut all these things. So guys, if you're watching this video and you are gaining value from this video, or from this tutorial rather, please do like and to subscribe to my channel, and also click on the notification bell so that you will be the first to know whenever I post another video. And also, if you have any question relating to this outfit, you can post them on the comment section, and then I would be willing and ready to answer them. I then went ahead to measure out my bust circumference, and I measured it out underneath my armhole area, and then I measured out my waist circumference also. The length of this top is 26 inches, just for you guys to know that, and I connected the line of the bust to the line of the waist circumference. Please note that if you are sewing this this shirt, it is not meant to be tight. If it's tight, it's not going to give you what you want. My original bust measurement was 31, but then I made it 38. I added in 7 inches allowance just so that it will be as free as possible. Then I went ahead to cut all this out. After doing this, I'm going to be notching over this my buttonhole allowance, and the essence of this is just so that I would be able to know where I am going to fold it, where my folding is going to stop. I notch the front and I also notch the bottom part. So the area that I am currently marking is the area that I am going to be sewing, and this is called my crotch area. So this is just for the front part, and I would also repeat the same process at the back part. So I just turned it to the front, and this is what it's looking like, guys. Remember this is my crotch area. So after sewing it, this is what it's looking like. I placed the back part on top of the front part, finding the middle part just to get an accurate body measurement, right? I placed both the crotch parts together. So for this bottom part, I use my pin. I'm going to just pin it. I don't have a pin, so let's just assume that I pinned it. So I held the both crotch part and I would sew along that line, and that's the bottom part of my palazzo. I would sew along the line, and then this is what it's looking like after sewing along that line. And I also repeated it at this process also. I sewed along that line also, so I sewed over the both lines together. So now this is the side of the palazzo. Like, this does not really have a measurement because I already cut it to my desired size, so I just used my chalk to mark across straight the part that I want to sew. So I just marked across straight. I really did not measure it, and this is what it's looking like, guys. After sewing it, I already went ahead to sew the side, and yes, I folded the bottom part of it, just your basic folding. I folded the bottom part of it. You can fold it to be small or to be big. So now this is the band for the up, and the essence why I'm using black for this is because the material was small, so that was it. So for the wideness of the band, it is folded into two. For you to make your band, you have to fold it into two. So it is 3 inches. The length is 3 inches. Why is it 3 inches? The original is supposed to be 2 inches, but after sewing, for the sake of sewing allowance, I added extra 1 inch. So I'm just cutting it across after making sure that the length is 3 inches. Now for the wideness, to determine the wideness, all you just have to do is to measure the circumference of your palazzo waist. So this is my palazzo, right, that I'm going to be attaching my band into. I just opened it up a little bit. So if your waist is 36, the length of the band would also be 36. So I placed it, I turned this upside down, as you guys can see, and then I'll be sewing all over the areas, guys. And this is what is looking like after attaching the band to my palazzo. This is what is looking like. So I'm going to be passing an elastic inside here. Yes, I'll be passing an elastic inside here. So that is all. Now for this top, this is the back part of my top. Yes, the shirt. I placed the front part, one part of the front, and then I placed the second part of the front. I'll be joining it through the shoulder point. This is the shoulder point. I will be joining it through the shoulder point all together, sewing across those lines. And this is what is looking like, guys, after sewing the lines. This is the shoulder lines, guys. I joined it through the shoulder lines. This is what is looking like after sewing it. The next thing I'm just going to do is to sew the side. And also this one, if you want to measure, you can measure, including your body and waist measurement, but I did not measure at this point. So from the bottom part, I just came up by 5 inches because I did not want to completely sew over the shirt area. So I just came up. That would just be like, let's call it like a slit. So that was what I did. I came up by 5 inches. So the point where I marked my 5 inches would be this point where I would stop sewing. So I just use my chalk to mark out the place I'm sewing. You can see I stopped where I marked my 5 inches. So after sewing it, this is what is looking like, and you guys can see that this part is open. Remember, it's just like a slit. I don't want to sew everything, so I'm just going to fold it. You guys can see the way I am folding it because we're not going to leave it like that. And then I just folded it, and I would also be folding the other side just to give it a neat finishing. So this is what is looking like, guys, after sewing it. I turned it to the front. This is what is looking like after sewing. I also sewed the bottom part also. I went ahead to sew the bottom part. It's nothing serious. So right now I'm just showing you the areas that I folded. I folded all the whole part, that's the bottom part. I folded everything. Now this is the opening of the shirt. Remember, guys, the area we notched at the front part, so we are just going to be folding it down. So this area, you are just going to fold it up to the point where we notched. We are folding it. This is the area that's our buttonhole allowance, our button allowance. So I repeated the same process at the other side also. I'm going to do the same thing, and this is what it's looking like, guys, after sewing. This is our button allowance. You can make your own size bigger, that's if you want. It depends on you. So the next thing I did was to place my tape at this part, and I'm just going to measure out what my neckline. So I'm measuring out the wideness of my neckline, and after measuring, it was giving me 18 inches. And why am I measuring the wideness of my neckline? It's just to create a collar, so that I'll be able to know what I'm working with. So I have a fabric here, the same fabric. I folded it into two. This is what I'm going to use to create my collar. So I'm just going to measure it to make sure that it is enough. The next thing I did was to measure out the length of the collar that I'm making. So I used 3.5 inches. But after sewing it, remember, this is the voiceover I'm doing, I realized that maybe if you're doing it, you should do it about 4.5 inches. So after sewing it with the allowance and everything, should give you about 3 inches. It's better. So for this part, remember, it's the wideness was 18 inches, but instead of dividing it by, instead of 9 inches, I made it 10 inches, adding extra 1 inch, and then I slanted it. So if you're making a collar, you have to slant this point. It is not equal, so you have to slant this point. If you don't slant it, it's not going to give you a collar. It's not going to make the collar look nice. So it's not having any sense if it's like equal measurement. So that's why I slanted it. Your collar has to be slanted. So after cutting it, I notched this area just to give me my center point. I also notched this area. So I'm going to be placing this on top of another fabric and so that it will give me two, and this is number one and this is number two. So instead of using a hairstay or a gum, I couldn't find any in my shop, so I just decided to use a lining. I don't know if it's going to do the magic, but I just had to use what I had. So I folded my neckline area into two. I folded it just to give me the center point, and then I'm going to notch this point also. So you have to give you your center point. All you have to do is to fold it into two, and then you notch the center point. So this place that is notched, I took the area that is notched in the collar, and I'm going to join it together also. I joined it together, the both notched areas together, and then I also repeated the same thing at this point. I turned it to the back, and then I'm just going to be joining the notched area together. Now these parts are my center point. This theory is really essential. So I sewed over this area, and this is what is looking like after joining the three parts after joining the three parts. Sorry, I turned it to the front, and this is what is looking like, guys. So this is what is looking like. I'm also repeating the same process, putting my main material, my shirt, in between the collars, and I'm just going to be sewing the areas all together. So guys, after sewing it, I also turned it to the front part. You guys can see that we do have an extra. It's better for you to have an extra than for you to be short on it. So from this point, the area where my sewing stopped, I marked a chalk on it, and then I slanted it. Do not make it straight, guys. If you're making a collar, this is not a turtleneck, so do not make it straight. And I already went ahead to sew it. I'm just trimming out the excesses. There's no need for allowance on your collar parts. So this is what it's looking like after I turned it. You guys can see the slanted effect that it had here. I also repeated the same process at this other side. So this is what it's looking like. So at this point, the next thing we are going to do is to give it a neat finishing. So this process I am actually doing currently. I'm just placing my shirt in between my collar. I just really wanted it to be neat. I don't want the sewing to be showing outside. So that was what I did. I placed my shirt into I place it into the both collars, and I'll be sewing the areas. But the thing is that if you cannot do this, it's also fine. You can just sew it on top of it. It's not bad. It's actually going to still come out nice. So I just trimmed out the excesses, as you guys can see, I trimmed out the excesses, and then I turned it to the front. You guys can see this process is not hard, but if you don't want to do it, if you cannot do it, you can just do the normal one. So this is what it's looking like. So for this point also, I'm just trying to bring everything all out using my scissors. I'm trying to bring everything all out. So I'm trying to bring out my slanted area of the collar. You don't want to remain anything at all. So remember guys, this part is opened. I didn't sew it up to that point, so this part is open. I am also going to repeat the same process. I'm going to put my shirt in between it also, and I would sew those areas. So now after doing that, this is the hand. Our hand is folded into two, giving us two sleeve, not hand sleeve, sorry guys. I measured out my length minusing my band. My band is 3 inches, so 21 minus 3 should give me what, 19 if I'm not mistaken. So I just carved out my sleeve area. I just went ahead to carve out my sleeve area, and then I'm just going to impute my sleeve measurements. So for my upper sleeve measurements, I marked it out. That's the circumference of it. I divided it by 2, and then I marked it. And also for my lower sleeve measurement, I divided it by 2, and then I marked it. I'm just going to combine the points. I'm going to join the points together. You guys can see how it's giving me a slanted form. That's what's supposed to give you. I also went ahead to add in my allowance. I did not really want the allowance to be that much, and this is what it's looking like guys after cutting it. So for this part, I just placed on one. I'm going to be working with one. I notched the bottom part just so that I'm going to get my center point. So that's why I notched it. So I advise you to notch it so that it will not be hard for you to get your center point. I opened it up. You guys can see I opened it up. So coming down from the bottom part, I'm just going to go up by 2 inches. And remember, when you see a t-shirt, the sleeve used to always have this open part. So that's what I'm trying to create here. I marked 2 inches at both sides, just as we did for the main top. So I sewed over it. You guys can see I sewed over it, but I did not sew it up to the point of the 2 inches. The next thing I did was to just print this area. And why did I print it? I just wanted to print it. It's nothing serious, and so that it will give me my exact round sleeve measurement. So this is what it's looking like guys after printing it. I turned it to the front, and then in here we have our band. I already sewed the side of the band, so I'm going to be placing this area in between it, the bottom part of my sleeve in between it, and then I'm going to be sewing all around it. I'm going to be sewing all around it after placing it. I'm going to be sewing all around it, and this is what it's looking like after sewing it. I'm just going to turn it to the front so that you can see what I am doing. So sorry I did not show you guys how I cut the band, but the band, remember the original is 3 inches, so I cut it to be 5 inches. And then for the wideness, to determine the wideness of the band, all I did was to measure out the wideness of my sleeve, the bottom part of the sleeve. That's what it gave me. So this is what it's looking like guys. I'm just going to sew in between this area. Also, I trimmed it a little bit because it was too much, and then I sewed over. So this technique I'm doing was what I was telling you, if you want to do on your shirt collar, is also going to come out nice. Placing it in between and sewing, you guys can see it's not bad. You can also do it for your shirt collar, right? So this is what it's looking like after doing it. And the next thing I'm just going to do is to attach it to my t-shirt. I'm going to attach it at both sides to my t-shirt, and this is what is looking like after attaching. Thank you so much guys for